Hey there, Braves fans. Welcome to another edition of State of the Braves. I'm your host, George McNair. I'm back with you guys. And unfortunately, I'm back with you right after 4 straight losses. The Braves are on a little bit of a skid right now after winning 8 straight and everybody feeling really good about things. 4 straight losses is something Braves fans are not used to. The Braves themselves are not used to. This is the first time that the Braves have lost 4 straight games since kind of the lowest part of the 2021 season before they went on to, of course, win the World Series. So maybe that's a good sign. I don't know. That's probably a little bit more than just seeing the glass half full. But that being said, you don't want to get too low. This is, of course, very early in the season. After a very good start, the Braves have definitely played not so great baseball the last 4 games against 2 very good teams in San Diego. They won that series but lost the last game of that series. Come back home, and unfortunately the Braves have not played well at home, and then they get swept by the Astros. That is not something that happens in Atlanta very often, the Braves getting swept. Of course, by a good Astros team, but an Astros team that really had not been playing well until they came to Atlanta in this weekend series. So just a very frustrating 3 games against the Astros for sure. If you guys caught it, basically the Braves blowing all 3 games. That's where it particularly stings. It's one thing when you get blown out in one game or whatever, or the bats go silent, but to be leading in all 3 of these games and then to lose all 3, it's quite frustrating. And of course, typically when that happens, you look towards the bullpen, and that is a big part of the issue for the Braves. It's not the only issue right now, and the Braves bullpen has been very good leading up to this series. So it's hard to throw too much shade on them, but you do have to obviously look at the events of this series and say, yeah, the bullpen was not very good in this one. So, you lose 4 straight. The Braves now are tied with the Mets at the end of Sunday. Tied for the Mets for the division lead. And the Braves will go on to take on the Marlins for the next 4 games. The Marlins actually have been playing pretty decent baseball. They do have a winning record at this point. So they're not going to be pushovers. Those games are in Atlanta, so hopefully the Braves can bounce back. They have been almost dominant on the road and struggled at home, so maybe they can bounce back and play well at home. You'd like them to start feeling good about their home games. So, what's been going on with the Braves these last 4 games? The obvious thing is the bullpen, but the other thing is the offense. The offense has cooled off, and I really start to wonder, the Braves have had to undergo some, like some other teams too, but, they've had to try to overcome some of these nagging injuries that have happened early in the season. Travis d'Arnaud and Michael Harris have been out for extended periods of time, and I think that's really starting to show up. And I think it got glossed over a good bit because the top 3 or 4 in the order we just started so well. And a couple of them are still playing well, but a couple have really fallen off the last week or so. Ronald Acuna and Murphy have both just been carrying the Braves pretty much, it seems like, their entire offense over the last week. Acuna has been awesome all year. He really has not waned at all. But his last 7 games, he's hitting almost 400, a 450 on base percentage, almost 600 slugging percentage, and on top of all that, 6 stolen bases. Right now, Acuna leads baseball with 12 steals. He's been a menace on the base paths, just very fun to watch. He has not hit a home run in that stretch. So the power it's been more doubles, singles, stolen bases. Basically, he's on second base almost all the time right now. So he is doing his part in trying to get some things going. The Braves have still been pretty good about scoring early runs, and yet it's like the bats are going absolutely silent for the second half of these games. Unfortunately, Matt Olson, who's, of course, hitting in the number 2 spot, he has just gone totally silent over the last week. He's hitting 115 with a 233 on base percentage over that time, just a 300 slugging percentage, only 1 home run, and just obviously not doing much at all during that time, and 12 strikeouts and I think that's about 26 at bats, so striking out almost once every 2 times up. He's been pretty bad after starting really great. So, maybe this is who Olson is. Maybe he's just a little bit more of a streaky hitter. He definitely looks a little frustrated at the plate right now, and hopefully he's going to break out of that really quickly. But when Acuna's getting on so much, it's a little more glaring with Olson's struggles when he's not able to put the bat on the ball at all. Move him over to third base at least in those situations, and give Austin Riley a little bit more of a chance to at least hit a sacrifice fly and get some of those cheap runs in. And it hasn't happened that much because Riley has also been struggling over the last 7. He is only hitting 160 with a 241 on base percentage and a 320 slugging. He has not hit a home run since he hit one home run in San Diego that helped the Braves win a 2-0 game. And since that, he has just not done much at all. So, it's just pretty glaring when Acuna's getting on so much. Olson and Riley have just gone silent. Now, very thankfully, Sean Murphy on the four spot has also been really awesome for the Braves lately. So another really positive thing for them is Murphy and how he has stepped up in the absence of Travis d'Arnaud. Now, he's only hitting 250 over the last week, but 400 on base percentage and a very robust 700 slugging percentage. He basically does not hit singles. These are home runs. These are doubles. He's got 3 home runs during that time. And when this guy hits a home run, it's pretty fun to watch. He swings really hard, and his home runs go very far. And so Murphy, on top of kind of proving to Braves fans, I think already, how excellent of a defensive catcher he is, he has been hitting the ball a long, long ways. So, him and Acuna have been impressive, but it's hard to say that much else has gone right offensively for the Braves over these last several games. And so I think when the top of the lineup, when all 3 or 4 top guys are playing at their best, you almost don't need the rest of the guys, right? They can carry you through a lot of games, and you're going to score a lot of runs just with those guys doing what they're capable of doing. Unfortunately, those bats have gone silent, and it has exposed the back end of the lineup a lot more recently. You've had a few good moments. Ozzie Albies has been a little better. He's hit a couple extra base hits. He had several RBIs in this series, so that's a positive development. I think Sam Hilliard has been just pretty solid throughout the course of his. He's been forced to play a lot of center field lately, and he's graded out well defensively. He's still hitting over 300 right now, so you give him some credit. But there's been several guys in the lineup that have just been a big negative, and that is particularly true of the DH position. So we are awaiting the return of Travis d'Arnaud and Michael Harris. I think those 2 guys are obviously incredibly important to the offense. It is amazing to think about how well the Braves had been playing without them, but I think this last stretch just has really proven the need for that depth of lineup that these guys are going to provide. I think when d'Arnaud comes back, partially because that injury is a concussion, I think you're going to see him at DH much more than catcher early on. That just makes sense, and Murphy has proven himself to be able to play multiple days without a break. And Murphy hits a lot better historically when he's catching than when he's DHing. So I think d'Arnaud is going to be DHing partially for that reason, but also the DH has just been an absolute black hole for the Braves offensively. The Braves rank absolute last in baseball in WAR at the DH position. It is ugly. It's almost a full negative 1.0 WAR already this season. Ozuna, everybody knows that Marcell Ozuna has just been horrendous at the plate. I mean, I don't even know what his average is right now, like 070. It's something like that. He's getting booed every time up. And I mean, I don't blame any Braves fans for booing him right now. He has just been a total negative on the team. And unfortunately, I like Eddie Rosario a lot more, but he hasn't been much better. He's had a couple good moments. I think it's been hard for him. The Braves have faced a lot of lefties early in the season, and he's gotten He's gotten benched a lot, and that's also pretty difficult when you're just getting yo-yoed back and forth in the lineup, out of the lineup every other game. I think he's had multiple days where he's set 2 or 3 days in a row. But excuses aside, Ozuna and Rosario both have been just very bad. Um, the only other guy who's gotten any kind of significant at bats at the DH position has been d'Arnaud, and he's the only positive. Everybody else has been bad, done basically nothing. And d'Arnaud, for a few starts early in the season, had some good games at the DH position. So I think it just makes sense when he comes back that he's going to get a lot of DH at bats, especially against lefties, and then maybe try to continue to go with Rosario for a little bit and see what he can do. But ultimately, you just got to put your best team out there. And it also makes me wonder when d'Arnaud comes back, is there even a place for Ozuna on this roster anymore? You guys know that I've been beating a drum for a long time that Ozuna should not be on this team. They have stuck with him for way longer than I think a lot of teams would. But now it starts to get to, what is Ozuna's role? If he's not going to hit and d'Arnaud comes back and the decision is that d'Arnaud is going to get even more DH at bats than maybe was originally planned, then what are you even doing with Ozuna? He's certainly not going to give you any value defensively. And you just, at some point, you just don't know, what is the purpose of this guy being on the team. So I'm not going to sit here and say 100% this is going to happen, but I think there's more of a chance than not that when d'Arnaud gets reinstated, that Ozuna might be gone. This might be the shoe that drops. That being said, in some ways I would be shocked if that does happen or surprised, just because the Braves, every time I think it's time for Ozuna to go, and it's kind of obvious to me that he's going to go, he doesn't go. And look, it's about the money. We know it's about the money. They don't want to eat the money. And it's also about, he has proven in the past to be a really good major league hitter, but he has not done it for the last 2 years. And he looks so bad right now that you just wonder if he's ever going to do it again. Of course, as it goes, if they do release Ozuna, he might latch on with another team and then just start hitting the cover off the ball. Yeah, it could happen, but he's not doing it for the Braves. And I think, you start really seeing what this team could look like day in, day out offensively with both Murphy and d'Arnaud in the lineup. And I think it's a whole lot better than if Ozuna's in that lineup. So anyways, obviously Michael Harris getting back to center field would be great too. You guys know I love Michael Harris. It is amazing to think the Braves have basically felt no positive impact from Harris this year. He played just the first few games of the season. He didn't really do anything particularly special in those few games. So he wasn't hitting on all cylinders, it seemed like. So getting him back and getting him to what he was doing last year would be just such a shot in the arm. And again, you start thinking about Harrison d'Arnaud being back in this lineup every day, how that lengthens the lineup that much more. I think if that happened too, you might see Hilliard slide over to left. Maybe you get we've seen Pilar play a lot of left field lately, and that has also spoken to how they've gone away from Ozuna. But I wonder if it becomes a Hilliard and Pilar left field platoon, and then you have a kind of a DH platoon with Rosario and d'Arnaud at DH. And I think that might be, at least for the short term, that might be your best bet, and see if Hilliard can continue, because he has looked very good. I heard one report the other day. You guys might have watched the game that was on Apple TV, which I really hate, by the way. I do not like those Apple TV commentators. They don't seem to know much about the teams that they are commentating on, but they did give one little nugget that I appreciated, and that was that Chipper Jones has been working one-on-one with Hilliard, and that makes a lot of sense because Hilliard has been really hitting the ball well, just playing well generally. So anyways, I could see him sliding over to left. Maybe Pilar gets some at-bats against lefties, and you go with that, along with Michael Harris being back in center field. Suddenly, you have either Hilliard or Pilar as your 9 hitter, and everything else just kind of falls in. Maybe Grissom goes down to 8, and you can just see how that lineup lengthens with those guys. It starts getting much more to what that lineup looked like at the beginning of the year. Speaking of Grissom, I just want to say he has not looked very good defensively, guys, and you guys know I am a big fan of Grissom long term. Maybe this is starting to expose some things that the Braves already knew and was not as evident in spring training. Look, struggles defensively, the guy, you don't want to just throw the guy out just because he's looked bad in a couple games. But you can see that he is not, I would say, even an average defensive shortstop right now. He has still hit the ball pretty well. He hasn't hit for much power. He's basically been a singles hitter since he's been up. But I do wonder long term if Arcia has to be out for an extended period of time if the Braves do something differently at shortstop, at least in the short term. I don't know. It's something to pay attention to long term. One of his errors did definitely hurt the Braves in that second game of the Astros series. It prolonged the inning. 2-run homer was hit right after that. That always hurts. So, again, I'm pulling for Grissom to figure this out. But defensive ability is not something that just happens overnight. He's going to have to continue to work hard. He knows that. I think he's generally had a good attitude about it. But the Braves, they are in win now mode. And so if it's an occasional error here and there, you can overcome that. If it's one error every game or even every other game, that really starts to wear on the rest of the team. So hopefully he can improve, and we'll just have to see on that one. The other struggle that's been frustrating over the last few games against the Astros especially has been the bullpen. And I think this is the same story as the lineup. A couple key guys being out. The Braves bullpen was, let's be honest, they were overachieving in a lot of ways over the last week or so. You had Jesse Chavez had not allowed a run all season. You had Tonkin coming in from out of nowhere and pitching really well. And these guys have started to be put into really high leverage moments. And against the Astros, they just didn't get it done. Chavez came in game 1 and gave up the lead. It was a 4-1 game. He gives up 3 runs almost immediately. And the Braves end up losing that one. And, Tonkin, like I said, came in. He's given up a couple lately. Yates also came in the Saturday game and did not look good and gave up a key run. And these guys are being put in high leverage situations where at the full strength of this bullpen, you're not going to have Kirby Yates coming in the 8th inning. You're not. He's one of the last guys out of the bullpen. You might have Chavez coming in the 6th, not in the 7th or 8th. And so you're seeing that, right? You're seeing them spread a little thin. And then on top of that, what's complicating is Minter has not been sharp at all. He gives up a home run to not Yonder Alonso. That's back in the day. To Yordan Alvarez in game 1 in a tie game in the 9th inning. And that cost the Braves that game. And then he blows another game. He comes into a tough situation. But, in this one, I think was a questionable decision by Snitker. Again, Minter had given up that home run to Alvarez in game 1. He clearly has not been sharp lately. It's a bases loaded situation in the 8th with 2 outs. Alvarez coming up. He calls on Minter again, same dude, and Alvarez gets him again. Not a home run this time, but a 2-run single, ties the game, and then the Braves go on. Minter gives it up in the next inning. And, just frustrating. Minter, a lot has been asked of him. I really think, it's hard to fully understand what's going on with him. Maybe it's just early and he's not sharp. But he was one I was concerned about with the pitch clock more than anybody else. He's one of the slowest really pitchers for the Braves, or he has been over the last few years. And I think it's messing with him. And, again, that being said, maybe it's just the fact that he's out of that setup man role and he's being asked to do more. Maybe he's feeling the pressure of that. I don't know. But he's had a tough stretch of things for sure. And, the bullpen as a whole, like I said, You give them a lot of credit for the first few weeks of the season, but these last 3 or 4 games have been pretty rough. Now, that being said, there's some negatives obviously to this podcast because the Braves have lost 4 in a row, and there's been some negatives. And trying to point out some positives too. And Acuna and Murphy offensively are 2 of those things that I definitely wanted to mention. But another positive I think that is looking very up for the Braves moving into this next stretch of games is the starting rotation. Everything seems to be back in place. Max Fried had a really good game today. Gives up no runs over 6 2/3 innings. Spencer Strider, I think, probably had one of his best starts of the season in his last start after being a little shaky early on. I'd mentioned him before. It looked like he'd gotten kind of chewed out by Kranitz, and since then he has really looked more like Spencer Strider of last year. Kyle Wright has been a little on and off since his return, but he's getting stretched out. Really, I think you could realistically say his last start would have been like his last start of spring training. I mean, he's kind of just now getting to where you expect him to be sharp and fully ready to go. But he's had good moments too. Charlie Morton had his best start of his season in his last start. And then Elder has been just really solid since he got called up. And so you have 5 guys that you really feel pretty good about every time out. It's just a matter of getting our offense back on track and getting the bullpen a little more locked down and in place. So that might not happen for a few games, but hopefully it does. And going against the Marlins, you're not going against the Astros and that level of competition. But, man, it does feel like the Astros just kicked our butts 3 straight games, and especially in the late innings. Astros just dominated. I think the broadcast today said they've outscored the Braves 12-0, 7th inning on. And, that's been one weird thing about the Braves is positive. They've been really, really good in the early innings of scoring early, but they have not been good late in games. So it's kind of a yin and yang to that. For some reason, it's like they're just on fire early and then they're asleep late in the game. And hopefully they can get a little more balanced and do it in both and start dominating again. Look, they're 14-8. Looking at this from a little distance, they're just fine. It's frustrating to lose 4 in a row, but they have 4 against the Marlins, and guess who's coming up next? Then they play the Mets. So you take 3 out of 4 against the Marlins, you start feeling better about yourself again, then you go and beat the Mets, and all will be right with the world. I'm hoping that will be the case. I'm hoping that in that stretch we might see d'Arnaud and Michael Harris again. Both of those guys, there's no strict timetable, but I would be shocked if we didn't see both of them before May 1st, which would be, basically a week out or less for both. I'm no doctor. I don't know how they're doing. Concussions and backs are both notoriously it's difficult to put a timetable on either, and you don't want to mess with either of those. So that's what's frustrating about those two injuries. I will say I've heard that Colin McHugh is probably coming back in the next day or two. That will be very good. Deep in the bullpen, just a little bit more. And Iglesias maybe the end of April, early May. So his has taken a little longer than I expected. But they're obviously being super cautious with all these guys. You can appreciate that. But when you start losing, it gets a little more frustrating and you get a little less patient with it than when you're winning. So, all right, Braves fans, well, be patient with me. I hope that the Braves go out and just, destroy the Marlins in 4 games and we all feel better about things and we move on from there. But that being said, frustrating 3 games against the Astros. The best thing that happened in this last game, this Sunday game against the Astros, is Sid Bream, one of the all-time favorite Braves ever, was in the broadcast booth for an inning. It was cool to see him and hear from him again and relive those things. And guys, I'll also say another positive. I really enjoyed Brandon Gaudin, the new Braves broadcast play-by-play guy. He has, I think Mark Bowman had an interview with him this week, and just recounting his Braves fandom. I mean, he is a true blue Braves fan growing up. He's right about my age. So I really appreciate all the things he said about growing up and the heartbreak of being a Braves fan and just also, him getting to work alongside Tom Glavine this weekend. And it's just like you can kind of live through him a little bit and you appreciate they didn't just go out and get any old guy, any random, decent broadcaster. This guy loves the Braves. Everything that he's doing is very meaningful to him. So I just appreciate it. So shout out to Brandon Gaudin. I'm definitely pulling for him to just have a great success in his career as the Braves broadcaster. And hopefully we can hear him calling some Braves wins in these next few weeks. So, all right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of State of the Braves. And I'll be back next time. And I hope that I'm coming back after a Braves win streak. All right, see you later.